You don't win because you speak fast. Okay, that's my turn.
Or can I get water?
Okay.
You're so polite, that's some good stuff. My preference is somewhat similar, you can speak as fast as you want, as long as it's clear for me, but more importantly, choose your arguments so that it's not like 50 arguments that are all crap. Choose, a few, honestly 2 or 3 is normally good to have a good debate, you don't need to have 10. And yeah, I think that's my major one.
I agree, it should be involved.
Okay, yep.
So we'll open the way
Like
for.
those things are so.
As soon as you're ready.
As soon as they're ready, you're ready.
Also, it's now recording.
It's,
I don't, that's already recording.
Oh, it's already.
Yeah, that's got a red light on it, I'm pretty sure that means it's recording, they probably let that bad boy run. Okay, are you guys set with your evidence?
Yeah.
Yes?
Are you guys okay with this?
Are you guys okay with saying that?
oh, yes.
By the way, here's what you hear. Time. That's what you'll hear. It'll sound just like that, and I will keep going. But anyway, keep your own, track of your own stuff. 4 minutes when you're ready.
Okay, my time will start now. Greetings. The government's duty is to protect the basic rights of every individual. However, the current social welfare system is being tested and leaves many people in need unable to receive timely help. Therefore, a universal basic income is needed to ensure that everyone has the resources to live a decent life. Universal basic income, or UBI, refers to regular cash payment made to a given population with minimal or no requirement to receive the money. However, by granting UBI per family according to the median, FCSU, or food, clothing, shelter, and utility costs around 12,300 NTD per month per person. A total of 3.5 trillion NTD of the state expenditure per year will be required, which we will conveniently retrieve from doubling the tax of the current situation. Implementing UBI would bring the following benefits. First, return and completeness of subsidies for the disadvantaged can be solved by unconditional grants. Article 155 of the Constitution mentions that the state should provide appropriate assistance and relief to people who are ill, weak, disabled, unable to live, or suffer from extraordinary disasters. However, the main tested social welfare system in Taiwan is unable to fulfill this purpose due to many reasons. For instance, the Taiwan Civic Dialogue Association mentioned that even the long-term unemployed, or those who only earn a meager income from part-time jobs, will be considered as capable of work and counted as receiving basic wage by the government. With their difficulties neglected, many unable to make a living are forced to live in poverty, leading to increased health and crime expenses. To illustrate, Business Today reported a young high school graduate with no parents stealing instant noodles in a supermarket due to the inability to receive low-income household subsidies, just because he reached adulthood. In addition, since real estate is also taken into account, the vulnerable may still be ineligible if they inherit an estate. Yahoo News mentioned, although 3 brothers and John Paul were on the verge of starving to death due to the inherited ancestral sanhe yuan from their parents, they were unable to apply for low-income subsidies. After being sent to the hospital, the eldest brother died of malnutrition. These problems highlight the urgent need for a UBI, ensuring that everyone's basic needs are met by covering those in need through unconditional grants. According to the reporter, not only did the hygiene significantly decrease after implementing UBI in a poor village in India, another case in Namibia shows that UBI dropped crime rates by 20%, saved social costs on crime. The reporter also stated that every dollar invested in children's health and education can save up to $9 of social costs on health and crime. This shows that UBI can effectively help those in need and save social costs. Second, a UBI can stimulate people to chase their dreams by freeing them from economic pressure, encouraging social innovation and economic growth. A Medium report in Japan found that under experimental UBI, there are 40% more people who wanted to start a business themselves than without UBI. Another interview by Crossing also showed that the interviewees were unhappy about their current job and work environment, but wouldn't quit due to the economic burden. They further stated that if UBI was given, they would definitely quit their current jobs and seek a better working environment. A UBI can further support their will to start their own business by providing them capital. The reporter mentioned a case in Namibia, in which a young mother with 7 children was interviewed. Originally only earning half the amount required to survive, she saved enough money to allow herself 250 loaves of bread per day with the help of the UBI. Besides, the implementation of UBI can also provide an economic basis for people who engage themselves in unpaid working status, which as a houseworkers and volunteers without needing to rely on others for financial support. UBI allows them to live without needing to worry about money, granting them a safety net to resist abuse from those originally sponsoring them and the ability to live independently. In conclusion, implementing UBI will not only help more people in need to leave poverty, but also allow people to pursue their passion without financial worries. And this is my constructive.
Alright.
Okay, opponents are ready.
Yeah.
Okay, just my time starts now. First contention 1, inflation. Handing out cash to everyone will lead to serious inflation negatively impact the economy, the people's lives, and possibly lead to mass recession. Iran proved this because it can no longer sustain the billions of dollars needed to pay cash handouts enacted by former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, something. A top official has said. Iran's UBI program was partially financed by printing money. This pushed inflation very high to 35% in 2013 and contributed to the collapse of Iran's currency in 2012. It has been proven very difficult to pull Iran's economy back out from recession caused by UBI-like program, causing both economy and political instability. Secondly, if UBI would cause inflation, then the purpose of and effectiveness of universal basic income will be lost. If the government hands out too much cash to the people, that means more purchasing power for the people, leading to a higher demand for products and services. This could lead to inflation in prices. If UBI really leads to inflation, then the bonus cash will mean nothing and lose its value, adding nothing positive and beneficial to people's lives. Instead of making it universal, we should consider people eligibility to prevent the damaging effects of that may come afterwards, including the falling of economy and too much debt. In Taiwan, we are currently already facing the crisis of inflation housing price. We cannot afford to harm our already fragile economy, further due to position with China. Threatening national security, Taiwan needs to be a high-saving country and be conservative because a crisis strike. This is the only way other countries will risk helping us, since we have money as backup. If we have to spend extra money on UBI, then this will put Taiwan in more debt because borrowing so much money from foreign countries. UBI does not solve poverty. Instead, it pulls more people into poverty because the inflation just makes goods and services even more expensive, which makes the money that the government gives lose its original purpose. And now moving on to our second contention, lazy and incentive workers. Since the UBI system gives people a certain amount of money to survive, people start slacking and not incentivized. If the government provides money for everyone, workers will no longer feel the need to work hard to earn a living because they know that they can always rely on UBI. This will further lower the productivity of companies, hurting the economy. For example, a US UBI experiment in the 1960s showed that productivity dropped by 43%, and that after an average American lost a job. It took them longer to begin a new one during the United States UBI experiment. Our economy is already extremely fragile right now, and we cannot afford to harm it even further, especially with our new position with China. Secondly, to fund a large-scale UBI, the taxes will have to be increased. On average, the majority of Americans will already give up about 50 cents of any additional dollar they make. If the tax is forced to be increased even more to finance UBI, it will dramatically reduce the incentive of workers for tens of millions of people. If the Resolution Foundation, a think tank in the UK, crunched the numbers to see what the cost would be to the taxpayer, they found that the amount paid would actually be much more than the amount received. Therefore, people would not have a reason to work hard. And even if they do tax harder, this will just make the money given to the people go back to the government, which doesn't really have any use. This is the end of my speech.
Crossfire, 3 minutes. How much schedule? I'll try not to
Second.
before speech. But ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crossfire.
Crossfire.
Do we have to go on stage?
Up to you. If you see or standing, doesn't matter.
Okay. So, I think that's what we're going to. You wanna ask first?
Okay. Do you know how much money the government will spend on UBI?
In our calculation, we think that the government is gonna spend 3.05 trillion on UBI.
How are you going to like? Is there any like money or how are you gonna like support?
Can I get this?
Okay.
You said the fund support of UBI.
Yeah.
Here, the taxation one.
About this.
So, now the current taxation is 3.25 trillion per year of Taiwan's taxation. And if we double, our policy is doubling up the tax. So if we doubling up the tax, we will have enough, we will have enough funds to, here, 3.25 trillion, so we will have enough funds to support UBI. So can I ask you a question? So I'll make sure the few arguments that you made. You made the first argument is that UBI will cause inflation.
Yeah.
And now Taiwan has too much debt, so it will increase to 35% till 2020.
No, that's just a research based on.
Also, can I see the research?
Okay. It's based on a country that installed UBI and it pushed the inflation to really high.
How did they get their money?
You mean for UBI?
This case. So the money is coming from printing dollars, right? In this
Yeah.
basis. But in our policy, we think that our fund will from taxation. So there's no new injection of money into the
Just
markets.
tax, if you tax even harder, doesn't that just take away the money that you give to UBI?
So now, if you earn higher, you get more tax, and you gotta pay more tax. And if someone is lower than the current line, they don't have to pay tax.
But doesn't that like also cause inflation because
No, that doesn't cause inflation.
No, you're taxing harder on the companies and other people. Doesn't that make like goods and services even more cost more because you're taxing? It's like cost push inflation because like
So we
resources.
didn't have new injection of money into the market. Because how we calculate the inflation is that each times the current the money supply times velocity of money equals to the current supply and so there's a calculation and your injection the supply of money increase needs to be higher than the economic growth. That will cause inflation, but that won't because there's no new injection of money into
I mean like if you tax harder on the companies, doesn't that mean they will have to increase their costs or like to increase their products in order to get their money back? But doesn't that just make the products?
Thank you.
Alright, do you need a prep time or are we good to go?
Wait,
I will get a product.
Okay, tell me when to stop, it started.
Okay, ours time to start.
Greetings. So let's look at the points that the opposition side brought up. The first is inflation. Their example does not apply because the money that they got from their example is because of printing money, and printing money itself causes inflation. So they do not have an example stating that UBI does cause inflation. But they have two logics that lead to inflation. The first logic is because the money is put into the market, so there's more demand, and more demand causes inflation. But however, the money that we tax is already in the market, so we tax the money in the market already and put it back to the market. So there's no actual money addition because the total amount of money is still the same. And the cost push one is they say that by taxing the businesses more, the businesses will rise the prices, and by rising the prices, stuff will inflate. But by giving UBI, we let people to create their own businesses. So there will be more businesses. So the supply will also increase. So with the supply increasing, the inflation will not be that severe. And the second point they brought up is about lazy workers. But here we have a evidence talking about Alaska's UBI experiment. It said that although UBI gave unconditional payments to everybody, but it had no real impact upon full-time employment levels, and part-time work rates increased about by 17%. We also have another evidence saying that in Iran, employment growth for the population in general and the population of the poorest 40% grew in work rate a lot. So when we both have evidence about work rate, one about decreasing, one about increasing, we don't know what will happen about the work rate. Will it increase or decrease? So they cannot prove their point that work rates will decrease. The third point is about when we have too much tax, then the rich will pay more. But we have an evidence saying that Taiwan's tax rates are very low. Taiwan's tax rates are only at around 18%, while countries like Canada and Germany, they have tax rates at around 38%. So doubling our taxes will only make our tax rates around normal, around the global, at a global perspective. So it's not that big of an issue by raising our taxes. So, and raising our taxes, people will not people who are rich, they should pay more money to the government because they have more money. But we're not making them lose money because in the accumulative tax rate, the highest tax rate is only 40%. By increasing it into 80%, they're still earning more money by earning more money because if they have like 10,000 that's the tax rate of 80%, they still earn 2,000 because it's a tax rate that the accumulated tax rate is that this amount of money is 7%, this amount of money is 30%, this amount of money is 40%. So the money that's, no matter the money in which area, they still earn more money when they earn more money. So the rich people, they have to pay 18%, 60%, and 80%. So they still earn money from each level. So we're not taking away, we're not making the rich people unable to earn money, and the more they earn, they still get more money. And back to our point. The first point is about people who cannot get these subsidies. So there are a lot of reasons people cannot get subsidies. One is because of the standards which we put in our case, and another one is we have evidence is that okay.
Again, you don't have to be scared when it says time, you're loud.
If you would just finish your sentence, that's okay.
Okay. I know it's scary. Ready? I'm gonna just hit
Tell
start,
us to
you
stop.
tell me when to stop. You're timing yourself, I'll tell you when it's all going.
Okay, you stop. Okay, so, time started. Okay, so, my time starts now. Firstly, attacking your contention that economic freedom and entrepreneurship. Firstly, entrepreneurship wouldn't increase because starting a business is taking an extremely high risk, and the success rate is going to be really low. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, almost 20% of businesses fail during their first year. And with more money to spend in the economy and rising demand, the cost of living and price of the products will increase, possibly leading to an inflation crisis. And this will make UBI essentially useless because the bonus cost will become a necessity instead of advantage, and adding nothing positive to people's lives. And therefore, there will actually be no extra money left to start businesses and other careers. Thus, the economic freedom of people will also not increase. And now, addressing their contention of poverty, their contention is untrue because since UBI is universal and conditional, the government will be handing out cash to everyone, including people who are already wealthy and have the ability to support themselves. And this means that the amount of benefits and each person can receive will decrease, which will harm the poor. And we should direct our resources at groups of people that are in most need instead of wasting resources on the wealthy. And if we keep on giving people who already have the upper hand more benefits and advantages, then this will just fuel inequality more. The people struggling in poverty will never be able to catch up. Also, the poverty line is technically a moving target, so as we become richer, we define what it means to be in poverty. And so, UBI will not eliminate relative poverty because the concept will simply be redefined in the post mind to reflect UBI incomes. And now, people living in poverty have always been defined as those who seem to have very low levels of consumptions and spendings, but this is not technically true. So even with the UBI, there will be plenty of people who make poor choices and thus end up in a worse condition than before. Okay, lastly, addressing on what they said about there will be no additional money added to the economy. And this is false because when you raise taxes on companies, they will need to raise their prices of the products and services in order to pay for the revenue and also earn profit. And you guys said that right now the tax rate is 38%. However, for you guys to double the tax rate, UBI will make the tax rise to 80%. And you also said that UBI will increase productivity and that we cannot prove it will be decreased. And the same logic would mean that you guys cannot prove that the productivity will be increased too. And it will be more logical that people would reduce incentives since they no longer need to work hard to support themselves.
Okay, ready for crossfire? Let's do 3 minutes.
Do you guys have any questions? Do you guys have any questions?
Yes. So we have evidence saying that there are people who, like the people in Shanghai, they have a house, but they cannot apply for the low-income subsidies. And there's people who feel ashamed to go apply for low-income subsidies. Like there's a Japanese PhD, and she did not want to go apply for the subsidies because she felt ashamed. So how are you going to give money to these people? How are you going to protect these people's right? Because they cannot get the money from the current low-income subsidies.
So they only take up a small percentage.
So you think as long as the poverty is a small percentage, you can just let them die and just don't care about it?
No, but then poverty won't be actually poverty because as I addressed in the rebuttal.
No, but what we're saying is when we give money to the poverty, at least they'll have more money. And when they have more money, they can solve their problems. So how are you going to give money to these people? Are you just going to let them starve and die?
So you mean without UBI they won't be able to support themselves?
Yes, that's why they need low-income subsidies, but they can't get it because we talked about it in our case. Because they have houses, or because they have a house, or because they are too ashamed, or like stuff like that. So how are you going to solve this problem?
So then the people they will actually face. So you mean they'll face like stereotyping because they have money?
They don't have money, so they're going to die. Okay, and you also said that by giving everybody UBI, the poor people, the money the poor people get will decrease. But now you don't have the tax. So by giving everybody UBI, everybody will get money. So everybody's money will increase because so the poor people will increase because you're actually taking money from the rich and giving it to the poor. So
you also tax the poor.
no, but the poor don't need to turn in tax because they don't have income. So they don't need to turn in income tax. So they don't have tax, so they actually get more money. Or if they have tax, they only need to pay a small amount of tax because Taiwanese tax rate is only around 18%. So doubling it is only about 30%. So and they earn only a little bit. So they turn in a little bit of money and get a lot of money in return. So you're improving the poor people's status and like from the rich people's money because the rich people don't need that much money.
But since inflation didn't happen, then the prices will ultimately increase. So that means that you guys.
Okay, so let's first make sure you guys cannot give money. You guys fail to give money to those in need that cannot apply for low-income subsidies. And by giving money to low-income subsidies, the number of money will increase. Okay, so now on to inflation. So you guys say that giving UBI was inflation. So the
number of money increase.
because the number of money increases. If inflation happens, the value of money decreases, but the number of money still increases. Because
What is money without value?
so we have to talk about whether inflation will happen and how severe it
You
is.
said like.
Yes, so that's the next point. So at least you give them money and the number increases. So now we have to talk about inflation, whether it will happen and how it will affect their money. Because we have proven that
Okay, there is
they
no
will.
overtime in Crossfire this time. Okay,
We'll take some prep time.
alright, well, run.
inflation 没有那么严重，因为就是还现在的利率那我们好很超车，那我们没有要去钞票，而且 impact 也没有上升，因为这些钱本来就是一直在市场在流动，确实课税在企业上面会让物价上升，但是毕竟他们完全没有钱，他们都在再来就是lazy workers 你要说这条谁没有人挣钱，然后 tax 太多的地方，你就说要把这个责任税交出来，有还要回去。
Good.
Okay, 3-minute summary.
Sure. My summary will start now. So upon crossfire, the opposing side didn't really solve the problem that because we're really sad to hear that because implementing UBI can let the poor get money, but if you maintain the current situation, those poor, those who are starving to death, can't even get the money, and you guys in the opposing side's world, those people would be those people in the bottom of the society will die because of starve or because of other situation, and they in the constructive time they say that they have a case said that the government used iron and let implement a UBI and let inflation to rise for 35%, but that's just not really what it. But that's because iron is something is to print money, but in our world we only take the money from the rich and inject the money into the free market. So there's no new capital added into a society, and lead on to the last contention that they make. They say that implementing UBI will lead to a lower incentive to work, but we have multiple cases showing that implementing UBI would increase, not decrease, but increase the working rate, and this will let people let people have more incentive to work instead of not working and being lazy. And in the opposing side's world, this will lead to because in our first argument we say that the current subsidies have a lot of incompleteness, and this will lead to many people being starved and being unable to take the subsidies. So if we maintain the current situation, this will lead to a very severe consequences. And so in our world, we want to implement a UBI to let people go to work and let people, even if they don't have to work, they can have the right and have the ability to live, have the right to live. Now, so yeah, I think that's my summary.
Okay, opponents are ready.
Yeah.
Okay. So my time starts now. Okay, first. Our best argument is UBI will lead to inflation, further damaging the economy and harming people's standard of living. And according to Iran, it's a case that even if they print money that causes the inflation that actually leads to their country collapsing. Similar disaster may happen in Taiwan. You guys provide no evidence that UBI will not lead to inflation, and because based on logic, the probability of that happening is really high because they will have a lot of more debt on the government. The chances of inflation is really high and inflation happens. This will make the poor in an even worse situation, as you mentioned. But UBI means that the government will have to print more money or maybe tax harder to get the money back. But both ways, the money is going back to the government, which eliminates the original purpose of UBI. This matters because UBI because Taiwan's economy might collapse. This is extremely dangerous, especially at a time where such risky position with China. China threatening to use national security. And you guys said if you increase the tax, you can get to about 30 trillion or a big amount of numbers, and that will be able to support UBI. However, if you're putting all the money on UBI, maybe there might be an earthquake, and you might need to support the harm. You're putting all of the money on UBI. It's a really big gambit because you're making all of your money on one thing, and if like China or something else happens, you have no money to help yourself, which would lead to yourself in really big debt. And our magnitude is really big because this inflation can lead to country loss, like our country falling down, or even further damage the poor and the people in poverty even more. In your world, the government only funds UBI about you didn't give any other things that because all of your money is going to UBI. Didn't really give where the other numbers will go. And also, it makes these more people lazy and creates labor shortages, decrease the workers' productivity, which actually harms the economic development. Because UBI traps the families in poverty, it will cause taxes to raise so that many families lose 50 cents of every dollar earned. This would be enormous destructive for the incentive to work and discourage the production throughout the economy. Yeah, that's basically it. Thank you.
Okay, Duran, crossfire. Everyone ready?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll start. Okay, so the first thing, you guys keep on exaggerating about inflation, but why did Iran's inflation go that high? It's because they printed money. All our money is funded by taxing, and taxing, of course I admit that there might be a little bit inflation because you tax on the companies, but it's not that severe. Like you're not printing money and you're not adding money to the
It is still severe because that's just making all of the costs and things even more expensive for the poor, which worsens your situation of the poor.
No, you only add a little bit of cost. The inflation doesn't go up to 35%. It went up to 35% because you kept adding money into the government, printed money.
How can you be sure inflation won't blow up in Taiwan?
Because you see, our tax rates, when we double our tax rates, it's only around the tax rates of Canada and Germany. Do they have severe inflation? No. So Taiwan is not going to blow up with inflation. We showed you the evidence. Like it's 19% tax rates when you double it.
If you're spending like basically all of your tax rate on UBI, how can you make sure?
No. We're spending all our taxes on UBI.
We're not spending all of our tax rate on UBI because we double up the taxes, so we have double the money, and that money is.
Yeah, you said that would be like
wait. So Taiwanese people now have 3 trillion tax. We double the tax to 6 trillion, and we use 3 trillion on UBI and 3 trillion on the original places we use the taxes. So we're not throwing away all the places where we're spending our original tax on. We double the tax and use the extra tax to give UBI.
And that will lead to the China potential.
Huh?
Is this actually a true example?
Yes,
yeah,
that's what we said in our case. We told you that we double the tax and pay the extra money to put into UBI. So we're not putting all the money in UBI. So all the risks that you said about like China invading and we having no money to deal with China invasion or earthquakes don't stand. Okay, so next question.
Wait,
You guys.
can we ask?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
So, aside from taxes, how are you finding people?
Only taxes.
Only
We
taxes.
told you that taxes is enough because giving a UBI to every person only requires 3 trillion, and Taiwanese current tax has 3.2 trillion. So when we double up the taxes, we will get 3 trillion extra.
Then how can you make sure if the money goes to the people in Uganda, and the poor people in poverty, how will they make the use of their own money?
We
Also,
have
we have
evidence
We have evidence
telling you
showing
that the people will not spend their money on waste, on drugs and
like-
alcohol, and
yeah.
they will spend more money on food and stuff that they actually need. And the logic is that according to the Maslow's pyramid, the basic needs are to survive. So they will spend the money on their survival first, and then if they have extra money, then they can use it to spend on other stuff. So they will not randomly spend stuff on stuff that to waste. Okay, so our question is,
So we actually have a parsing that like the number 2 primary is actually about drugs.
Huh?
Like the number 2, the second highest.
Oh, the second highest is not mainly good. It's not mainly good.
Again, no extra extension on crossfire. Alright, so do we need to use our prep?
Oh, okay. We're gonna use our prep. So-
Alright, we got about a minute and a half, a little more.
my time starts
Ooh,
now.
ready to go.
Okay, so they say that the tobacco and stuff is the second largest market in Taiwan. But it's only the second largest because a lot of rich people throw money into the market because the rich people smoke and stuff. Because here we have an evidence saying that 80% of the rich do not spend money on alcohol and tobacco once they get the UBI. So they will not. So in the condition that they will not spend the money, what's the difference between us and them? The difference is that the poor people who currently cannot get money, like the Changhua brothers who were starving to death, or the person who was ashamed to go get the UBI, now with UBI they can get the money and they will not starve to death. So compared to them just letting the poor people die, we are willing to give money to the poor to help them. And their comments, they say that inflation will happen, but we believe it is not severe because they gave 3 statements. One is Iran, but it doesn't stand because the inflation will cause because of printing money. The second is demand drive, but it doesn't stand because the money tax was originally already in the market. The third is cost push. Of course, cost push will rise a bit, but the cost of living goods is just around like Germany and Canada because our tax rates are relatively low, and by doubling the tax rates, our tax rates are only like around Germany and Canada. So it's just going to be, the cost is not going to raise very severely, and Taiwan is not going to become an inflation explosion. So we believe that our UBI can help the poor people. And on working rates, they gave evidence on working rates decreasing, and we gave evidence about working rates increasing. So we cannot say that UBI does cause working rate decrease or working rates increase. So this point doesn't stand. And they said that UBI causes all the money given by UBI getting back to the government. But what we think UBI is a redistribution of money. The rich have the duty to give money to the poor. And that's my speech.
Please answer.
Yep, we got about 2 minutes.
Oh, we misread our evidence. It's 80% of the poor do not spend money. I realize that's true.
Time.
Okay, so my time starts now. Our best argument is that UBI will lead to inflation and seriously harm people's life in the economy. And if prices do inflate, the purpose of UBI will be diminished. And firstly, we win on probability because the case of Iran has already proven the possibility of inflation and is incredibly high. And the opposing team gives no evidence that there will not be inflation. They mentioned all these things about redirecting the money, but we are telling you that there will be inflation based on the country's examples. The inflation crisis in Iran has collapsed the economy and currency in 2012, and if the Taiwanese government does not give basic income, Taiwan will be following Iran's path into a devastating economic recession. And also, doubling the tax rates will double the price of goods since the companies still need to cover their revenues in order to earn profit. And even if you don't buy that, we also went on time frame because even though you said UBI will help the poor and give them a big boost in their money, but then in our world, inflation is a really long-term crisis which can affect both the society, people as individuals, and also our country. And also lastly, we went on magnitude because the impact of inflation definitely outweighs their impact of certain businesses. And inflation will put thousands of people at risk of being in poverty and harm our economy. The Taiwanese government has stated that Taiwan's inflation level of 2.95 for 2022 was the highest in 14 years. And Taiwan's housing prices over inflation crisis is becoming more and more severe, therefore that we cannot afford to face another inflation. And on the other hand, their contention does not have any impact since there won't be any extra money for certain businesses. Nearly 1 in 5 US businesses fail in the first year, according to the latest data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. So even if entrepreneurship is encouraged, the chance of starting a successful business is super low, thus very few people's lives will be impacted. And now we turn their argument on UBI solving poverty because the consequences of UBI cost inflation would trap even more people in poverty rather than lift them out of a financially stressed state. The study Joint Research Center of the European Commission shows that low-income households in these countries may devote twice as high a share of their total budget to food and energy than their high-income peers.
State something. I know it's not going to affect the
You can state something, but that last speech is the only one that went a little far in overtime too. What's up?
It's not going to affect the competition, but 2 times tax rate does not result in 2 times price because the tax is only 5%.
Talk about that outside of that. We are knowledgeable enough
Yes,
to
I
do
know
that.
I know it's
So
not
you
going
can
to
talk
affect.
about that with them outside as much as you want. We're gonna deliberate. We'll call you right back in just a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
Good. That's perfect, Nate.
So a low point win would mean that they're not allowing low point win here, but a low point win would mean like, oh, these guys were super.
Yes, I know it's not going to influence the competition, but I just want to say.
Everyone set with theirs?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I'm just a little ready here. I'll call them back in, we gotta keep our feedback short.
I need it back.
You're our next, I didn't do it.
Yeah, I saw nothing.
You're our next group?
Yeah.
Then I need you to go outside while we give them feedback.
Yes.
In fact, I wouldn't have let you in during this, but come on in, we're gonna boot them out. By the way, this dude, I just literally knocked your computer off.
Oh, it's okay.
And hopefully it wasn't busted.
It's not going to break.
Well, it landed on
I
my
knocked
foot,
it over
rather
a lot
on my
of
foot rather than the floor, but anyway, I apologize, it was hard on my head to look. So these are only our debaters, no other additional groups, okay. Does anyone wanna chime in, you want me to just go for it?
I want to say something about Jianzong, your team. You mentioned, I want to specify the importance of numbers giving. So just now you mentioned a comparison of the tax rate between Taiwan and Canada. You mentioned like Taiwan only 18%, Canada 38%. But you forgot to also think about the pay rate. So as judge, I don't know anything about pay rate. So what do you mean by 18% and 38%? Just because we have low tax rate doesn't mean like people in Taiwan would have lower tax charge compared to Canada, because people in Canada also earn different income. So you have to specify what your numbers mean. And also to you guys, the percentage sometimes may not, implying anything. You cannot just comparing, which percentage is higher or lower. You have to give explanation on that. And one more thing is that don't mention something that came out of the blue unless you are sure it is very important. You mentioned a couple of times of the China condition. I cannot see how it is very important to building your case, because now we are discussing UBI. Then you have to elaborate a little more on how the China condition fits in, the impacts UBI is going to bring.
Direct connection.
Yeah, direct connection. So you lose me a little bit. And just something about my personal preference, and I would suggest you to ask, other judges' preference a little bit more. When you're doing crossfire, wait until the opponents clarify themselves, because you are asking them questions, right? When they're explaining, let them finish first. You cannot just interrupt in the middle because they're trying to clarify what you have just asked. And sometimes you can be very firm. If they're asking a follow-up question, it's okay, but if they're making new points, you can be very firm, like, sorry, I have to ask my questions, like that, to,
Yeah, I was gonna comment on that. This is, excuse the term, but gentleman's game, or it's a team, a sport that deals with being respectful to your opponents. And not to say that it's terrible if it's your strategy to just keep talking right over them, but in general, it's frowned upon. So especially in public forum, you have to, after you ask your question, even just say, do you have a question? Okay, well, I have another. You have to give them that just moment to go on. And that also goes into, particularly speaker 3, which is you, sorry. And David, you were spending quite a bit of your time during not the Grand Crossfire, but the original one, where you were explaining about your argument rather than even asking a question. And it was nearly half of the time, wasn't a question, it was you telling her why she's wrong, as opposed to asking her a question or answering her questions. And that really, doesn't go well as far as like you're supposed to be asking and getting clarification. Save it for your speech. If she gets something wrong, save it for the speech or have your partner do it. So, by the way, at the very beginning, our comments are to help you improve. That is not the reason that we're voting the way we are. Everyone's like, oh no! Okay, we still are voting. These are reasons for you to improve upon. So, realize that. All right, you can keep going again, more.
No.
That's it? Do you want to jump in?
Yes, I would say for Jianzong, you have inherited some bad habits from the Chinese debating culture. For example, like you give very tactical arguments. For example, you were saying higher tax is nothing for Taiwan, but in fact it's not nothing. I was kind of surprised that the Communist side didn't question about the higher tax at all. But in fact, if you think about it, 80% tax is just not gonna happen. But you present it as logically possible. I understand it's a debate tactic, but it doesn't feel good for other people listening to it because it's too technical. It's also the same on the inflation part, that you caught their logical bias by using Iran's case saying, oh, it's because they're printing money. But there are lots of different reasons that will cause inflation, not just printing money. I know you know it, but you just pick this side, pick this point to kind of balance what you want to say. And it's smart, it's brilliant, but it's just not fair, I would say, to the audience and to this debate. That's my comment.
Okay, I'm gonna go quickly because we're now at the time we're supposed to start the next one. One thing I really would like to see you defend more against, which I think was a great thing on your side, is talking about starting up new businesses and how that's gonna, improve things. But they said, hey, these businesses fail all the time. And so I wish you were able to address how is that not gonna be an issue? Is it just like, they'll just start again, they'll just start again, and they'll just, or what? Because it is important for there to be revenue to come in if you're gonna be taxing it. Also, you could have pointed out, like, they keep saying, we're gonna take all the money from the rich. Who runs this country, the poor or the rich?
Rich.
Why are they gonna be like, yeah, take my money, I'm okay with that, like, I'm just saying, like, you can challenge, like, are the rich gonna be okay with that? I mean, let's be honest, they're not gonna want a whole bunch of people who are just taking our money and taxing us more. Because yeah, the taxes impact the rich more. And the rich, I hate to say it, I'm not rich, but the rich run the world. They do. Alright, I can't go into too much, I generally would agree with everything that was said here. We are at time, so read our comments if you feel like that. Come see me later if you still have more comment or things. And if you ask the organizers, I'm okay with even sharing my email if you ask them for Nate. Not to say I'll remember your case specifically at that point, I'll do my best. For all judges, on 3, point to the team that won, okay? 1, 2, 3. Okay, we gave us that. But, one last thing, use your time. This was the first time that we weren't going like, overtime by a few seconds every time. You had like a minute and a half out of a 4-minute speech that you didn't even use. A minute and a half is crazy. So if you have even 30 seconds, guys, sometimes it's 30 seconds for you, you can bring in evidence, you can bring up something, but there shouldn't be 35 seconds, 10 seconds. I get that, you're ending. But a minute and a half or 30 seconds, debate, one of the things that makes it a sport is that it's time, that you have a limited resource that you have to use wisely. And if you're just throwing that away, I as a judge am gonna go, you got nothing? Like you got nothing more? Come on, you should be like, look at all those papers, did you read everything there? Did you connect everything there? And I'm sure there's a bunch on your computer. Even if it's just another piece of information from another study that reinforces, it's okay. You just say, going back to my earlier point, this, okay? That's fine. All right, get out, shake hands, and then we'll start the next round. So, and I gotta go to a new area, so I'm out of here.